Hi, friends, and welcome to an episode of Bite Size Bish. I have been living in the weeds, which is why if you're watching this video, my hair is currently wet as I'm podcasting, but here we are. Today, I am going to be talking about Next Gen New York City premiere, and I'm also going to be talking a little bit about the Valley. And I'm going to be covering them briefly because the next episode you hear will be with our dear friend Mandy Slutzker, another M&M Hour. So Mandy and I are going to talk about all things Next Gen New York City, the Valley, definitely Real Housewives of Rhode Island, because for those of you wondering where the heck did those podcasts go, I apologize. So essentially for those who haven't listened or are just catching up, I experienced the loss of my grandfather, and I literally announced that I would be doing more podcasts on the day that I had to put him in hospice, and it's been the most arduous few months of my actual life. So I've just been doing the best that I can. And honestly, for once in my life, not feeling bad about it. Again, I'm super grateful for Brady. And so should you all be, because none of this would be happening without him. It's easy enough for me to watch the shows, to do my interpretations and write my notes and talk about it. The editing is like a torture device to me. And so Brady not only has been stepping up for me in that way, he and Lindsay have also been huge supports for me in ways that people I've known for decades have not. So truly, I say this all the time, but Brady, thank you for your service. And that's what I'm going to be covering today. At the end of the podcast, for those of you who are interested, I'm going to give some personal updates about my health and about mental health and physical health, because I've had a lot going on. So if you're interested, please stay until the end of the podcast. And if not, that's no problem. So before I get started today, I just want to remind people of a couple things. I've had a lot of new listeners, which thank you. I'm super grateful. I'm really, really, really grateful to this community, because the one thing that I'll tell you that grief has opened my eyes to is that the ways that people do show up and that they don't show up. And what I will tell you is that this community shows up for me. I don't even have to advertise my podcast. Even if I don't post on social media, if I don't post on my Instagram, you all listen. And to me, that is absolutely priceless and such a beautiful thing. I don't know what I did to deserve it, but thank you, thank you, thank you sincerely. There would be no me without you. And also thank you to this community, especially my Patreon community, who have just been super helpful, super supportive, just lovely human beings. And it restores my faith in things when I'm really having a hard time. So for those of you who want to know how to support, you can go over to Patreon, www.patreon.com/yourbishtherapist, YOURBISH therapist. There is a community over there. I do ad-free, full video, bonus apps, Zooms, which I have to get back on now that I'm coming out of the weeds, I hope. I hope this is just not where I live now. And the other ways you can support, I do have a Spreaker supporters club that is through Spreaker, which is my platform. And you can subscribe through Apple Podcasts. And those are kind of all the ways that you can subscribe and support. I also do offer Instagram subscriptions at Your Bish Therapist on Instagram. I use those subscriptions. I prioritize DMs because I just get too many DMs. I can't answer them. It's paralyzed me. I don't even answer my husband's. By the way, if you're listening to this and you're like, I've sent her DMs and she has not responded. Well, I don't respond to my husband's either. And he's like, Melissa, why? So I'm so sorry that I have a literal mental block with DMs. I'm going to work on it in therapy. But for today, let's start with talking about the Valley. And the reason I'm going to start with the Valley is because I haven't watched in several weeks. So because I've just been really struggling mentally and physically, unfortunately now Bravo, I still love it, but it feels like work. So I just couldn't watch anything because I'm like, I didn't have the mental bandwidth to even think, because that's the weird thing about grief is it makes my brain just not function. Like it feels like I have an actual disease. And I mean, I have a lot of diseases. It made me feel like I had a new disease, and I don't. It's just called grief, and it's making my brain just and not function. The fact that I can even put words together, do any podcast, or put anything on social media that resembles something that makes sense is absolutely shocking for me, considering what I'm experiencing. But my point is that I haven't watched The Valley for several weeks. And when I tuned in, I was just like, what the actual fuck? So the most recent episode essentially was that they go to celebrate Schwartz's birthday, Schwartzapalooza, I think in Mexico. I'm not totally sure where they are, because all I could focus on is that this whole episode, Danny is doing the same thing that Amanda Batula did on Summer House, which is triangulating people to get everybody to argue and fight battles for him or to cause chaos on his behalf while he sits on a couch drinking his water bottle. I'm using that in quotes on the video. And, Danny was literally like, why is everyone so heated? And I was like, it was a scene for me that I was like, oh, he's doing the same thing that Amanda Batula was doing, which is he's the reason for all this chaos. Because let me be clear, what we're talking about, we're arguing more about semantics than about what Danny actually did. And I swear to you, last night, I was watching shows and I'm like, I don't know if I care about this. I don't know if I can do this. And I swear to you, I was 5 minutes in with Danny and the beast was activated. And I was like, oh, Bish is back. Bish is back, because Danny has activated me. And I'm like, I just need to talk about it. So here's a reminder of what happened that Danny is still trying to argue about. Okay, so last season, Danny put his hand on Jasmine's thigh, saying, "Get daddy a drink," before approaching her fiance, Melissa, and grabbing her butt. Brittany also said that Danny got drunk at her house and was following her around and behaving inappropriately. Michelle said she gets uncomfortable about how Danny behaves when he drinks. We see how Danny behaves when he drinks, and he behaves like a creep. There's no other way to say it. He has creepy, inappropriate, odd behavior when he is intoxicated, which the cameras have caught now, numerous times. And so what Danny and Nia are mad about is that Janet said, and that what I appreciated in this episode is Janet was just like, everyone is fighting because I said that Danny sexually assaulted Jasmine and Melissa. And that's where we're at, right? But what's the problem for me is I'm like, why are we fighting more about what Janet said and not about what Danny did? And then I got activated and I was like, okay, well, I need to talk about this. So let me throw some definitions out there and state my case here. So sexual assault is defined as any non-consensual sexual contact or behavior that happens without clear, voluntary, and informed consent. It is a broad term that encompasses a range of offenses and is entirely the responsibility of the perpetrator. Okay, I'm going to repeat that again. It is entirely the responsibility of the perpetrator. Okay? While in this situation, I understand that there is some nuance involved. I do understand that. I understand why Nia's upset about it, because your husband being accused of sexual assault is like a threat to her safety. I think that, because of Nia's scarcity trauma, I think that she is worried about Danny having negative consequences, that, he gets kicked off the show, which is their livelihood. He loses jobs, things like that. However, that has not happened because Danny was supposed to be on Watch What Happens Live with Luke the night of one of his worst episodes. And he had to work, which on Watch What Happens Live, Andy called Nia out about that. He was like, well, you're the first Bucko or however they pronounce their last name to be on the show. And he kind of grilled Nia about that. And she's like, yeah, he did have to work. And I wish he would have posted about it on social media, blah, blah, blah. And so the point is that I understand that term has a lot of weight to it. But I also need to point out that the term technically defines what occurred. Okay. So I understand that that's a term that has a lot of weight to it, as it should. But the fact is that Danny admitted to and apologized for touching Jasmine and Melissa in a sexually inappropriate manner without their consent. So it makes me wild that we are arguing about semantics. And, further, Danny is just so dumb because it's like, if you just would have apologized, really meant it, owned it, and moved forward, we wouldn't be talking about any of this. Danny is the reason he's being viewed in a bad light. He wants it to be Nia. He wants it to be Janet. He wants it to be Jax. He wants it to be everybody else but him. But the only problem here is Danny Bucco. That's it. Also, side note, Luke saying to Janet that the incident that happened with Jasmine was alleged after Danny already admitted to it, apologized for it, and his wife, Kristen, claimed she saw Jasmine. And I hate to say it, Kristen can't see Jasmine if your husband is out here. And I understand we don't control other people, but your husband is out here trying to say this incident was alleged while you're trying to sincerely apologize to Jasmine. I'm sorry, those two things are incongruent. They just are. And I don't like it. I think it's bullshit. And I think this is the reason why women don't come forward. And I just think the whole thing is gross. I think Luke and in this episode, Zach inexplicably, he just got drunk and lost his mind and also kind of accidentally defended Danny. And I'm just like, consequences of our actions, my friends. So Danny admitted to liking negative posts about Janet and Jason because he's angry that Janet used the term sexual assault. And he literally said that he feels anger and hate towards Janet for calling out what he did, which is well, maybe you should turn some of that inward and be mad at yourself for what you did. How about that? But the most ridiculous part came, oh my God, when Danny claimed he has PTSD and trauma due to character defamation, resulting in meeting weekly with a therapist. I'm number one, who is this therapist? Is it a therapist? Is it a coach? Is it what are we talking about? Number one. And number two, I would die to be a fly on the wall and understand what this relationship is like. I don't, all helpers are different. I don't know what this person is telling Danny, but let me be clear about a couple of things. Okay. So defamation of character, it's a legal term for any false, unprivileged statement communicated to others that damages a person or business's reputation. A true statement cannot be considered character defamation. So there's that. And then PTSD is a psychiatric condition that develops in some individuals after experiencing or witnessing a life-threatening or deeply traumatic event. It occurs when the body's natural fight or flight response remains activated, preventing the brain from properly processing the trauma. And as someone who has complex PTSD, when Danny claimed that he has PTSD from this incident, I actually laughed out loud. And I do not care how insensitive that sounds because PTSD and trauma are very serious mental health issues. And Danny framing himself as a victim of Janet's words is absolutely infuriating and it is laughable. He's not traumatized. He's experiencing appropriate shame as a result of his own actions. PTSD, it develops when someone's personal sense of safety is threatened. So if Danny was kicked off the show, if he was canceled, if he lost jobs, if he and Nia lost their house, that would be trauma. That would be PTSD inducing sort of scenarios. None of that has happened. He has had zero consequences for his behaviors. And the fact that he is privileged enough to continue to argue semantics tells me how little consequences he's actually had. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that right there. The other thing that I wanted to say is that during Danny and Lala's argument, it's so crazy how Danny talks to women and people and he just gets away with it. To me, Lala is the best thing about the Valley. She keeps her foot on Danny's neck and she knows how to talk to that little troll in a way that gets us somewhere. I'm Lala deserves an award. She's the MVP here. And here's why I believe Lala is successful at talking to Danny. She knows how to talk to men like this. She knows how to engage with people like this. She knows how to fawn, how to use a certain tone of voice, how to use an attitude to appear non-threatening, but to actually really get the information. It's actually pretty genius if you watch it. But when Nia, during Danny and Lala's argument, Nia said to Danny, I wanted to make sure things were calm and chill, which is the fawn trauma response in action for sure. And the fawn trauma response, it's a coping mechanism where someone instinctively appeases, accommodates, or pleases others to avoid conflict, avert danger, and maintain connection. So her kind, sweet, like presentation, it's partly a fawn response because she's used to having to keep Danny in check. Nia is Danny's emotional thermostat, which is also known as codependency. So she has to keep herself calm while he spins out, and then she has to regulate him basically like a child. I mean, sincerely, like a child. And the important thing that I want to say is that the fawn response comes at a really significant cost of chronic stress, emotional exhaustion, and eventually people lose their identity because the brain equates appeasing with survival, and fawning can keep us trapped in toxic relationships and situations. So Danny was mad that Nia didn't defend him, but he has no awareness that his behaviors have been indefensible. The fact that Nia went on Watch What Happens Live and she was like fawning all over live TV. Like when you see Nia, you can tell she's performing, right? She's trying to sit up straight. It's very pageanty. She was built for this life because of her childhood trauma, having to make the best of situations, having to try to be positive despite, when she and her mom were like living in a car, didn't have money, things like that. So I hope for Nia's sake that it sounds like she's also in therapy, but I hope that she understands that it's not her job to regulate her husband, because I do like Nia. And I think that I understand, like, she loves this man and they have 4 little kids together. And I certainly don't want anything bad to happen to them. I want them to be happy and prosper. But I'm also not going to stop calling Danny out on his insane behavior. And so Lala called out Luke, Kristen, and Zach for their blind loyalty to Danny. And here's what I want to say about that. Loyally supporting really problematic, shitty behavior is codependency wrapped in like a prettier bow. It's unhealthy for Danny. It's unhealthy for the group as a whole. And people need to stop being mad about what Janet said and focus on what Danny did and continues to do. And then the last part is just that, Danny has been caught lying about hiding his alcohol a bazillion times, and we watch him again in real time apologize for lying about his drinking while lying to Zach's face about leaving the White Claw in Brittany's gym, which is honestly, this is how I know this is problematic, because that's the dumbest thing to lie about, especially when producers caught it on camera. And so Danny continues to lie and blame PTSD, and it's just manipulation, pure and simple. I just need to be super clear about that. It's absolutely manipulation. And when the worst person in the world, aka Jax Taylor, has it out for you and calls you out for being a problem, you in danger, girl. So moving on to Next Gen New York City, this episode was so good. My only real beef is that Charlie is back, because Charlie, to me, is on par with just like the shitty men of Bravo, with the Danny Buccos, with the Jax Taylors, with the Brian Pontarellis from Real Housewives of Rhode Island, which I can't wait to talk about the reunion, but that's going to be a separate episode. Charlie sucks, and he has some really problematic characteristics that set off a lot of alarm bells in me, and his just arrogance and his ego, and then trying to be like, oh, I know I was in the news for like a kidnapping plot, but you know what? I really can't talk about it. And if anyone tries to press me, I'm just going to like totally freak out. And then I'm just going to like run my fingers through my hair and just be like, he's just like, oh God, I really have a hard time with him. So we see at the beginning that Ariana and Hudson break up. And essentially what was happening is that they've been together since they were kids. And Ariana was clear that she was always the cheerleader for Hudson, and she needed a cheerleader too. And I'm going to be honest, someone like Ariana being raised by Kim Zolciak, who created talk about trauma, and PTSD for her children. Her and Croy, I don't care if they want to argue semantics about who did what. They both really fucked up with their kids, and they fucked up a lot of things. And for Kim to just continue to drink wine and try to go on shows like nothing happened, it personally sickens me. But my point is, the reason that Ariana chose someone like Hudson, who needed her to hold his hand and needed like parenting and needed love and support, she realized she wasn't getting that in return. And that's what she needed. And I believe that's because of what her relationship with her mom taught her. Her relationship taught her to abandon herself and take care of other people because you love them and they've been in your life for a long time. And that's really sad. But what I'm happy about is that Ariana is choosing herself and moving to New York and having this amazing life. I really like Ariana. I think she's an absolute doll. And I'm just cheering her on the whole way. And I do hope that Hudson grows up because, love isn't enough. It just isn't. Adult relationships that go the distance require blood, sweat, and tears. Both parties have to really be active participants in their own growth, like individual growth, and then growth as a couple. That's what it takes to have a healthy relationship long term. So I hope that Hudson gets there for himself. And then here's the thing. I really like Amira, but the thing that I don't like about her is, why is she continuing to inflict Charlie upon us all? She's the one connection to Charlie in the group. And I understand she's not in charge of production or casting or whatever, but whoever just forced Charlie back into our lives, why? We could have been free. And it just does not make any sense. So the one major thing that happened that I do want to talk about is that Georgia talked about going to an inpatient treatment center for an eating disorder. And tonight, we watched this thing where we flash back to last season where Amira said that Georgia fat shamed her when she was eating. She kind of made a comment about, the Ozempic is wearing off. And so here's a couple things to me is that it's clear to me that Georgia needing inpatient treatment for an eating disorder is the highest level of care, and you don't go inpatient unless you meet certain criteria for that. So I assure you that Georgia was really sick, and I'm really, really grateful to see her come out and thrive and be in a better place. The one thing that does really upset me, and this is just a PSA, is that we don't need to comment on people's bodies ever. It's like society feels incessantly like it has to happen, but I promise you, we don't need to do it. And it makes me crazy that this person is dealing with an eating disorder and, you see the comments about her looks and it's just that's deadly for someone with an eating disorder because that means they have distorted self-perception. They may have an unstable self-concept initially, which this can all change and grow in recovery. But I just want to remind people, we don't need to make comments about people's looks or their bodies. And I just think it's gross. And I think it needs to stop. Other people's bodies are none of our fucking business. How about that? But I think going back to her comment with Amira, it was her own distorted perception of weight led her to project her own fears onto Amira. And so I'm not saying it's okay. What Georgia said wasn't okay, but it's also now gives really rich context underneath why she said that, because she was projecting her own distorted self-perception and unhealthy relationship with food. But then it also seemed like Amira was mad about two things: that she outed her use of Ozempic. And I thought to myself, wait a second. Amira was basically saying that she is also in recovery from an eating disorder, but she was mad that Georgia outed the fact that she was on Ozempic. And here's the thing. Okay. Ozempic and GLP-1s for a lot of folks are incredibly helpful. They have a medical purpose. But if Amira was using it to eat less, that's medically assisted anorexia. I'm going to be honest about that. There are some people who use Ozempic responsibly, and there are some people who use it to stop eating, and that is medically assisted anorexia. Okay. So I just want to be really clear about that. And that made me a little concerned for Amira, but then we kind of find out that it may Georgia said through the gay grapevine, which the way she described it, it was just pure gold. It was like, it's a network of gays that's international and there's a pipeline of information. And I was like, I need to tap into this gay grapevine. How do I get in? What's my code? What's the knock on the door? I need to get into this grapevine. But Amira was really mad about Georgia flirting with her boyfriend, Kevin. And Georgia addressed it and she just was like, I would never, and said never like 100,000 times, never, ever, ever, ever do that. And Amira was kind of like, okay. But Amira still seems pretty salty about it and just doesn't like Georgia. And that's fine. But, I don't know. There's parts of Amira that I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I'm taking note. But the oddest thing is Charlie taking Hudson under his wing. But like the reason for it is that Charlie joked about like being like a narcissist. He said like because of his narcissism that he's blind to certain things. And he said it's like hieroglyphics, like it's a language he can't understand. And I was like, oh, finally some truth from Charlie. Because he's right. It's like emotional intelligence and there's certain things that because of his narcissistic traits and tendencies, he can admit it's like a language he doesn't understand. And so Charlie is taking Hudson under his wing as some sort of like narcissistic big brother program. And I'm not here for it. And I hope Hudson runs away really, really fast because Charlie likes Hudson because he had something that Charlie wanted, because Charlie sees women as things, not as people. And I don't know if that's ever going to change, but that's definitely what he does. And I think he is like, oh, Hudson's rich and I can feed on him like a parasite. And that's kind of how I think Charlie rolls. I think he's very parasitic. So Ava, I just feel like has been super rude. I'm not a fan of her. Don't come for a sweet Gia. Okay. Gia moved into her own apartment in New Jersey, and I love her friendship with Ariana. I love her friendship with Riley. And you know how I know Miss Riley Burris is a star? Is that I missed her this first episode. I was like, where's Riley? There are all these people here, but I need my boo. I need Riley. Where is she? And I can't wait till she's back. The star energy runs in the Burris family. What can you say about that? So there's just this stupid storyline between Ava and Gia about like, Ava said that Teresa followed her and unfollowed her. And Gia was like, that's not true. And then Ava was like, you're calling me a liar. And it's like, who the fuck cares about this? You all don't have enough happening in your life if this is like what you care about. This is just so nonsensical. Oh, here's the other interesting thing. So we find out too that Ariana is on probation for a DUI. And I need to learn a little bit more information about that, but she said it's something that happened a couple years ago and then she just didn't deal with it, which is like avoidance is what Kim taught her children, like just avoid. Just drink wine, buy things, and avoid the fact that you're in financial ruin or having legal trouble. And so I think what we're seeing is her learning to become an adult because unfortunately, that wasn't taught to her. So that is going to be it for the Bravo portion. And I just want to share really quickly with you guys that so physically and emotionally, I know this is like a huge left turn, but I realize this is a bite-sized Bish, not a full episode. So bear with me. I have been really struggling with depression, anxiety, and like my physical health has been very bad. So when my grandmother died 9 months ago, ever since then, my grandfather struggled and he just never recovered. He just couldn't live without her. He couldn't adjust to it. He couldn't remember it. It was just the saddest thing that I had ever seen. And so initially in those first months, he seemed to do well, or there were certain weeks where he would do well, but it was just really kind of the beginning of the end. And so my point is that what this audience doesn't know, and I'm going to start talking more about this on Patreon. So if you want more personal episodes or information, check out Patreon. But I just was in the weeds for the last few months in ways that I have a hard time even explaining or processing right now. I was forced to do things to show up in ways for him that I wouldn't have not shown up, but I had to risk my health and well-being to really meet those needs. And I knew I was doing it, and I knew it was going to catch up with me. But the problem is I have the brain of someone who is extraordinarily motivated, I'm just a helper by nature. When I love people, I will go to the ends of the earth. I am a ride or die. And he needed me. And so that's what I did. But it came at the cost of me, which I know ultimately, he and my grandmother would be really upset about. But I just did what was required. And then after he died, I was the one doing everything. And the reason for that is because after all of this, I just realized I do not have a good support system. And what upsets me the most about this is knowing that my two people, my safe spaces are gone. And then what I'm left with is just like absolutely horrible. I mean, y'all, it's bad. And the reason why I can say this is because none of those people listen to this podcast, God forbid. But being left with just such awful, awful stuff, it has created a vacuum of loneliness for me that I feel like could kill me. It won't. And I know I'll be okay. But the vacuum of loneliness, it's just been absolutely horrendous. I don't know what my life is without him. I don't know what I will do with my time eventually, because right now I'm very busy, finalizing things for him and, paying bills and just like doing all the things. But I'm worried about when that stops. And I know, again, for me, I just know me well enough to know, and I have a lot of insight and awareness. And despite the fact that I understand what's going on, it doesn't change the fact it's still hard. It's still challenging. I'm still grieving. Therapy has been really helpful, but really tolerating the discomfort is probably the biggest thing that I'm learning, and trying to have patience with myself. Because the other thing is, so I was having an autoimmune flare. My health has been really not great. I get these inflammatory responses. I have like a mixed connective tissue disease. I also have developed Sjogren's in my eyes, which has caused real problems, Raynaud's syndrome, and a couple of other autoimmune issues. And so I was grieving on steroids. And there was one incident. I'm going to tell the story on Patreon. So if you want to check that out, go over and join Patreon. I was literally unhinged. Like, grieving on steroids was a hell that I didn't want. And thankfully now I'm off of them, so I can kind of go back a little bit to normal. But I did something super unhinged, and it's embarrassing and funny. So I'm going to share that over on Patreon. So my message today is that I will be fine. And sometimes, when you're really struggling, you got to take it 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time. Tolerate the discomfort, but most importantly, self-attend. So for me, self-attending means feeding my body appropriately, because I've not been eating or sleeping just because I've been like forgetting, and sleeping is just because I'm too stressed. So I am back to feeding my body properly, sleeping well, or good sleep hygiene, I should say. Sometimes I'm still like wide awake at 2 a.m., but I know how to manage that. Using a lot of nature, dancing and moving my body, exercise, walking, using the supports that I do have, which again are people I met on the internet and not people that I've had in my life for decades, which is wacky. And just continuing to talk about things in therapy. And when things come up, just observe it and move forward. I mean, I understand I'm making it sound very simplistic, but at the end of the day, it's like, life is hard, and I'm just here to share my experience, strength, and hope with you all. And so for those who are struggling, for those who are grieving, for those who are having a hard time, I send you a lot of love. And I will say one thing is that listener Kate has been a part of this Patreon community and YBT community for a long time. She just had a very significant cancer diagnosis. And so I just want to say to Kate, we love you. We support you. And if you want to give Kate some support, come on over to Patreon and you can chat with her in the group. So for everyone else who's managing cancer, caregiving, grief, all of the above, I feel you, I see you, I understand you, you're not alone. And I'm just grateful for this community. So that's going to be it for me today. Sending love to you and yours, and ta-ta for now. Disclaimer. Posts are not intended to diagnose, treat, or provide medical advice. Your Bish therapist is for entertainment and informational purposes only. The podcast, my opinions, and posts are my own and not associated with past or present employers, any organizations, Bravo TV, Greyheart Productions, or any other television network. The information in YBT podcast and on its social media is provided for general informational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat. Please do not act or refrain from acting based on anything you read, see, or hear on YBT podcast or associated social media. Communicating with YBT via email and or social media does not form a therapeutic alliance. Melissa, operator of YBT, is unable to provide any therapeutic advice, treatment, or feedback.